Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. If you got any questions, post yours down below and let's get started. Hey Alex, why does almost nobody talk about maximizing adductors? I heard the adductors are bigger muscle group than hamstrings, but everyone seems to only look at the quads and hams. Why is that? And do you think it would be beneficial to train them? Greetings from the Netherlands with much love from Canada. 3 things to consider here. 1, not knowing. 2, not caring because there's nothing aesthetic or sexy about the adductors. Everyone wants to have nice quads and glutes, and then the hamstrings obviously complements that from the rear. Third thing is that most of your leg exercises when running an appropriate program will hypertrophy the adductors to a tremendous extent. In fact, squats seems to build the adductors like crazy. Now you can make the potential argument that including wide stance variations, smashing those sumos hard, and even doing single leg work can contribute a little bit more. But regardless of all that, if you get decently strong at the barbell back squat, you're going to have nice adductors and your legs overall are going to be pretty aesthetic. I'm going to say get it between 3 and 4 plates. Watch how your legs look like. Most lifters won't have a problem with the adductors. Maybe a small percentage will have to do a little bit of extra focus with the good girl, bad girl machine or other specialized drills. But you don't hear a lot of trainers talking about it because it just happens automatically as a result of you inducing progressive load over time. Not to mention the fact that so many other exercises kind of overlap in this regard. So I wouldn't stress. Worst case, you do 1 exercise at the end additional for direct attention, and that's it. Hey Alex, props to your physique. You're looking huge lately. My question is fat loss the same if I, instead of cutting 400 calories 6 days per week, just cut 2,400 calories once per week? Thanks, man. Keep up the great videos. Theoretically, we can make the argument. But what are the implications of running a massive deficit on one day or doing it over the weekend? Impaired recovery while negatively hurting your appetite. You might undergo a binge eating phase by which the next week will be very hard to follow a consistent diet. So there's that to consider. And then what about the muscle protein synthesis? Okay, you're in a deficit. I get it, total net calories throughout the week. You know, it's still calories in versus calories out. But does your body react the same way from an energy standpoint and what you could produce during your weekly workouts? I'm not sure this is the case, but from a fat loss standpoint, I suppose this could indeed be effective. Like let's say 5 days in a row, I'm eating in the maintenance phase. And then Saturday, Sunday, I do a 48-hour fast. I don't see why I wouldn't lose weight. Question is, what's my Monday workout going to look like? I think it does make a difference in this way. But then you can also make the argument that if you're only doing it on one day, so let's say you don't eat whatsoever, well, maybe you were already recovered by the Saturday. But then are you going to come in a little bit depleted on the Monday? What if you eat the moment you wake up and you sleep well? So honestly, we can just speculate and base it off what other people have done. And having done some 48s and 72s myself, or just undergoing certain fasting phases by which the calories are not the same day to day, from what I've experienced, it's not as good for recovery. You're going to have some workouts that don't quite feel the best, but you do lose weight. That's the thing. Hey Alex, since you've gotten your home cable setup, do you find yourself still doing the band version for exercises like push downs, pull downs, and face pulls, or do you find the cable version to be superior? Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks. Absolutely. But during the actual workout days, I pretty much use the cable exclusively because it allows me to progressive overload in a classic fashion. I can do reps of 8 to 12 and actually reach muscular failure, which was very hard to do with the bands. It hits a point where it doesn't really make sense. You're having to double up the bands and use excessive tensions. And at that point, the strength curve has been modified to the extent that it's not really giving you the same degree of carryover. Yes, it's good for the connective tissue, and as an overall mass builder, you can't go wrong. But there's just something about the classic cable push down. It's difficult to replicate. Same thing on the lat pull down. Yeah, I did average band rows and pull downs. You know what happens? You move the freaking rack. And then I gotta put it back to the original position every single time while messing up my little mat formation. With the cable setup, that's not really a problem. So for convenience and easy tracking, this is the way to go. The only exception would be the band face pull. I much prefer those over the cable face pulls. Always did. Even at the gym, I rarely ever did it on the cables. Like obviously there are workout videos where you can see me doing this, but that doesn't mean that's my preference. I simply like to rotate exercises to minimize overuse. And even when we talk about basic exercises, like face pulls, I still advise modifying it slightly. Anyway, I love bands for warm-ups or super high rep finishers, as well as connective tissue work. Therefore, on the off days is where I'll do my band push downs of reps of 25 to 50. sometimes even 100, depending what tension is being used. And that's where I drive an additional volume into the upper back as well. I don't usually do the cable row for that, though that would probably be effective too. So I would still say that bands are absolutely amazing, and I probably will never stop recommending them because I truly believe in the injury prevention benefits and the fact that you're changing things up, different strength curve. It's not the same. So I like variety in general. Do you think people with naturally lower testosterone levels or with thyroid problems can achieve great bodies as well? If so, will it take significantly longer? Love from Hungary. Yes, I do. And when we talk about naturally lower levels, what are you referring to? Are you talking about having to need TRT, but you're just being stubborn and not using it? And you've tried every natural method of raising it, but you're just screwed in that way? If that's the case, like you got the T levels of a 90-year-old male, I don't see why you would not try to seek help. And in that case, your gains will absolutely be impaired, no question about it. But if you're just on the lower end of the normal range, I think it'd be just fine. You can get an advanced body, no problem, in my opinion. People don't realize this, but the natural range is not super physiological. So whether you're at 500 or 700, I highly doubt you would see a big difference in muscle gaining potential. The truth is, most men are normal. And do you actually know that your T levels are low? Have you ever gotten it tested? Like I can say in my case, I haven't done a single test for that. I have no clue where I'm at. Imagine I did it and I find out I'm on the lower side. I don't know. I don't give a f. I know that I feel good. My sex drive is good. I'm making great gains in the gym. I have no problem recovering. So I'm assuming that I'm fine, but I don't know where it is on the spectrum. If I were to make a guess, I'd say I'm probably average. I don't think my T levels are really freaking high, but I guess I wouldn't know unless I found out and did a little test, right? So at the end of the day, just focus on proper programming, man. Learn about what real athletes are doing. Eat like an absolute champ. Sleep. The basics. And train for 5-10 years. I don't care if you're on the lower side. If you train for that long, you're going to have a nice body. Maybe not super elite, okay? Because we have to be the best versions of ourselves, okay? Not comparing yourself to a genetic freak who also has high T, even though the high T is not really the factor that's making the gains here, in my opinion. None of that matters. Just focus on your own individual progression in the long term, and you're going to be fine. And if you really, really, really have such low T to the point where you can't recover at all, and you've tried everything, then just get on TRT. What can I say? In regards to thyroid issues, I believe you can get medication for that, but if it still persists, it just means you have to pay more attention to diet. So your TDEE might be 250, 500 calories less. I don't know exactly what you'd be working with, but the point is you still have control over what you put into your mouth. If you're getting adequate protein and rest, your diet's clean overall, I wouldn't really stress. It might be a little bit more challenging to get to your desired physique goal, but to say that you can't do it, I'd say that's unreasonable because you're settling for a fatter state when it doesn't have to be that way. Hey Alex, I'm a beginner obese guy doing calisthenics and limited weights. Is it okay for me to do full body 2 times a week and GPP work? I think that's a good idea, but my only concern would be you not being able to finish the full body workouts. That in itself requires a good deal of work capacity. And if you're obese, I would imagine that effect is somewhat compromised. So maybe in your case, doing an upper lower would be a better choice. It's only 4 days a week. You're getting twice a week muscle protein synthesis, and you're going to have the energy to put in your full effort into the upper and lower body training. And then at the very end, that's when you could throw in the GPP, as opposed to doing full body twice a week and then maybe GPP every day or every other day, depending how it's affecting your recovery. I dig that part, the conditioning stuff. I'm just concerned if the full body is going to be too aggressive for you right now. Because if you're obese, that's not just having a little bit of chub here. Like, these workouts are hard for lean guys. So I can only imagine how that would feel like for you. But if you got the guts and the drive to push through it and it's not a problem, obviously recovery is not going to be an issue. You got that extra fat storage, go ahead and do it. But I don't want you being extremely out of breath and having to half-ass the later part of the workout because you're just not fit enough. So that's my only concern with this approach. Otherwise, I would say it's great. Heck, I would say even do 3 times a week full body. By the way, I like your idea of doing calisthenics because your body's so heavy that even doing basic push-ups and inverted rows will get really good results in the chest, shoulders, triceps, upper back. You probably don't have to do weights right now because you're already doing weighted calisthenics. Pretty cool if you ask me. Hey Alex, my knees have been bothering me lately when I squat. Any advice on how to train legs with knee pain? I don't know what the causes are. That's a very general question, my man. So I'll just give you a general response. Are you doing full range of motion or not? If it's above parallel squats, that's why you have knee pain. You're reversing at the point where there's a lot of shearing forces. You need to go through the proper range of motion, either at parallel or slightly below, or even do an ass to grass if that's what your anthropometry permits. I know in my case, that's pretty much what feels the best. Going far below parallel. Obviously, slightly higher than that is still okay, but what feels number one is ATG. But that's how I'm built. I got shorter legs. Maybe it's not the same for you. So it starts with proper range of motion. Secondly, you may want to start doing some box squats. This will break up the eccentric concentric chain and allow you to sit back a little bit more. That could be less stressful on the knees. Not to mention the fact that sitting down deloads the knees, yet you're still building the quads like crazy. So when we think about extreme reversals, that's when the pain can set in. Finally, I would tell you to smash your hamstrings like there's no tomorrow. There's probably an imbalance. You're likely a quad dominant lifter and neglected the posterior chain for some time. So by focusing on the rear side, it's going to put everything back to where it should be. Oh, and as a bonus tip, I'll tell you to check out the knees over toes guy because he has a lot of really unique exercises and a different take on addressing knee pain as a whole. And again, that's going to include doing full range of motion exercises among human knee extensions, Nordic leg curls, all that stuff. Just check out his channel. I think you'll be all set. Hey Alex, does being able to do 16 chest to wall handstand pushups in one set guarantee a bodyweight military press? Great content, by the way. For most of the calisthenics athletes I've seen who excel at handstand pushups, they can easily do a bodyweight military press for reps. And 16 is pretty intense on this exercise, so I don't see that being unrealistic. But again, nothing is truly guaranteed unless you go to gym and you test it. So why don't you just do that? If this is where your strength is at, don't even guess it. Don't say, oh, I could probably do a bodyweight press. Go to gym and perhaps you can do a lot more. Isn't that better news? So I'm always confused when people ask me, like, could I do this? Well, just do it. And you'll have your answer. Like, you don't even have to ask me. Like, you waited. I'm not ranting against you, by the way. I appreciate your question. But you waited a week for me to answer this question. You would have had your answer by now, just by going in and doing it. And then you could have based your programming a little bit differently. If you didn't get it, you're like, okay, how come? And you're going to have to test it anyway, right? If you want to really find out. So I don't know, bro. I think it's doable. It's specific. I know that Paul Anderson uses exercise with tremendous success. In my experience, it's been helpful as well for the overhead press. I think I did 15 reps on deficit version, and I can do well over my body weight for reps. So yeah, it's a great exercise. I'm not going to say anything negative about it. Just I can't tell you what the one-to-one transference will be. And I don't think anyone can because it's not a barbell overhead press. It's similar, but it's not the same movement. Alpha D, do you think I need to train delts directly? I tested my OHP 100 max the first time and it's 65% of my bench. Never trained shoulders directly, and I think the ratio shows I just need to work on triceps. What do you think? Thank you. Well, getting stronger at the bench is always going to guarantee a somewhat strong overhead press to a certain extent, the vice versa as well. The question is that optimal for maximizing your delt gains or even your 1 rep max OHP? And to that, the clear answer is no. If you care about vertical presses or you want to have the biggest shoulder of which your potential allows for, absolutely throw in some direct work. It could be 1 OHP at the end of your program or even a handstand pushup, as well as 1 accessory. Nothing complicated. You don't have to do a dedicated shoulder day. Just a little bit of additional work will be the icing on the cake, not to mention the fact that it's good for your longevity. So doing stuff like band face pulls and rear delt flies should be highly encouraged for anyone who wants to be in this game long term, because the shoulders are most prone to injuries. So the fact that we know this, it's not your pecs you got to be worried about in most cases. The fact that shoulders are getting snapped up left and right by a huge percentage of lifters here should tell you that direct work is indeed important. So whenever someone approaches things from a minimalist perspective, I'm always cautious. To me, it's a red flag for possible overuse, which can absolutely, easily be minimized by rotating variations, adding in a bit of vertical stuff, and then of course, hitting your accessories, not being lazy on that. So at the bare minimum, if you don't want to do side raises, which I don't do myself, at least do the band face pull. And I guarantee you'll be a lot happier for it. Hey Alex, would farmer walks with lightweight for long distance, 1 to 2 miles, be good for trap gains? Probably, especially if you're doing that at a high frequency. In a way, it's a form of nucleus overload. In fact, one of the original videos I saw by Team 3D Alpha was this Indian guy who lived in the mountains who would carry buckets of water every single day. And he was a skinny motherfucker, like no muscle anywhere except for traps. He had traps that looked like mine, if not even bigger than that. Why? Way to stretch. That's what I'm always telling you guys. Zero shrugging required. That's why rack pulls are so effective. That's why the farmer walk in general is so effective. Just that people tend to go heavier on that movement. But any additional work is always going to be beneficial in this regard. So why not? If you're doing your GPP work already and farmer walks are a part of that, you're gonna walk for long periods of time. I would say it can absolutely help you in the long run. But shorter distances would probably be better. You can do 100 meters with some heavy ass weight. I think that's really going to blow up your traps and grip. But if you're going for 1-2 miles, okay, go for it, man. It's more of a long-term approach, and it's an accumulation of the additional workload. And if you're going to do something like that, the higher frequency would be advised. Hey Alex, I've been working out for 4 years, plateaued on the heavy weights and feeling burnt out before every session. I switched to full body 3 times a week for a month now, and I've noticed I'm recovering better, lifting more, and feeling excited once again before every workout. Was I doing something wrong with my older push-pull legs workout, or is full body just better for the average lifter not on gear? Well, I don't know what your push-pull legs routine was, but a lot of them are written by absolute morons who have zero understanding of proper programming. And most of full body routines I see tend to be quite balanced while not having tremendous amounts of junk volume. So you're doing your fundamental compounds, you hit an accessory 2 at the end of the program, you're good to go. So that in itself is leading to better recovery, in my opinion. But a step beyond that is the fact that you're in the gym 3 days a week, probably doing a heavy, light, medium setup, right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But what else is happening during this process? You are acquiring 3 times a week muscle protein synthesis, but you're only training 3 days a week. Whereas the push-pull legs, you were in the gym 6 days a week. And keep in mind, you only have one nervous system, and fatigue builds up day to day, whether you're training upper body or not, right? So 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. You were doing that, right? For what? Twice a week muscle protein synthesis. So you were basically training twice as much for a similar muscle gaining response. And because you probably could have gone a little bit harder on those workouts, maybe that's where the recovery issues came into play. You exceeded your maximum recoverable volume. You thought it was all good because, hey, I'm just doing the presses today, so let's add another press or something. You probably don't need more than 12 sets a week. The range is 10 to 20, but for some of you, you're going to be on the lower side of that. I bet with the push-pull legs, you were 20, maybe even beyond that point. So it really comes down to volume manipulation and the fact that you're just in the gym a lot. It doesn't matter if it's a different muscle group. It's still the same nervous system. And that's something that I rarely hear people talking about. And fatigue is accumulative. Like you feel it. If I do a squat on Monday, let's say I do 3 heavy squats plus some heavy ass deadlifts on Monday. You don't think that's not going to have somewhat of an impact when I bench the next day? Of course it will. Not in the muscle aspect, but in terms of how you feel. Especially if you're not managing recovery after the fact with the proper nutrition and the sleep. I guess with a full body, you get more of a break as well in that regard. So that 40-hour break allows you to fully recharge everything. So that's really what I'm seeing over here. Benefits and possible dangers with weighted vests, walking and running. I'd say the walking is probably okay because it's low stress on the joints. And yeah, you're at a heavier weight with that vest on, but by how much is the question? And does that really affect your workouts? Probably not. Whereas the running with a weighted vest, let's say you got 20 to 40 pounds on, for one, it's going to distort your technique, which may not be good when you take that thing off. And 2, there's high impact forces here, which can absolutely affect your squatting performance and systemic fatigue. So the injuries are higher with the running compared to the walking. Put this in perspective, running already has a lot of compressive forces. And if you're doing sprints, many would consider that to be a max effort exercise by itself. Add weights on top of that, plus distorted technique, yeah, you're increasing the mileage on the body. But simply walking around, going for a hike, it's going to be, you're going to be tired, obviously, by the end of it. You can get that hard working, and it's good for overall long-term fitness. Obviously, you can be less out of breath, but you're still getting a training effect that isn't too harsh. The worst thing we could talk about is probably being slightly more damaging to the knees. But again, I don't think it would be that bad compared to everything else that we tend to do with our workouts. All right, guys, final question of the week. Hey, Alex, I was wondering what you think of upright rows or the Yates row. I find it helps since I have not so good lower back. Well, if you have lower back issues and you can only row with straight weight in upright position, then I can see that being beneficial, as well as doing pendlay rows since you're deloading lower back. So perhaps you can give that a shot as well. An additional thing beyond that would be doing cable rows. There's nothing wrong with it for building upper back. It may not be as specific for building the deadlifts, but you're probably not caring about that either right now. So I would say you're going to be okay from a muscle building standpoint. The only thing I'm not a fan of are the upright rows, especially if using a narrower grip. I don't think it's a necessary exercise at all, and the risk of shoulder impingement is quite high. So if you insist on doing it with a barbell, for one, use a wider grip, and two, don't bring it higher than your nipple. If you're doing this version right here, you're going to destroy your shoulders at some point. I don't care what anybody says. So that's what you do with a bar. Otherwise, use dumbbells, and it allows for a more natural range of motion. Okay? And as far as the Yates rows are concerned, yeah, you can lift a little bit heavier. You can say it's slightly more upper back focus. And really, it's that retraction element combined with the stretching component that's going to build your upper back. Like, you don't actually have to be bent forward in a super deep position because that's loading your spinal rectus more, while also increasing the range of motion of the rowing pattern. But that said, even if you're upright, it doesn't change the finishing portion or the fact that you can simultaneously round or get that stretch at the bottom. Just that you got to go a lot heavier to get a similar training response. So from a stimulus to fatigue standpoint, it might not be as good. But then you got to ask, if it's easier on lower back recovery, does that make it more worth it? Possibly. So all I'm going to say is that I don't see anything wrong with the Yates row. I would do them too. Actually, I used to for a long time, and they gave me great gains in the upper back. And I did them with an overhand grip, by the way, not under, as Dorian used to recommend. So yeah, I think if you make those slight modifications to your upright row, and maybe you can do other forms of rowing as well, like inverted rows or with the cables to get just more range of motion in general, slightly more of a traditional horizontal pull, you'll get the best gains possible. Anyway, we're done for today. This was a quick Q&A. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let's see some more questions down below, and I will talk to you all in the next one.